Hours before the Prime Minister's resignation, Ukraine's lower house voted to dissolve parliament, but only after making it impossible for the communists to be part of the next one. They were deemed not to have enough deputies to be represented. In elections 2 years ago, the communists secured 13% of the vote. That's representing about 2.5 million people. Some of its members lost their seats amid the political turmoil in the country and had 23 deputies remaining when it was excluded. The parliament speaker said getting rid of the party was a historic mission, adding that he hoped there would never again be another communist faction in the legislature. The leader of the country's Communist Party called it a political lynching, saying it was a crackdown on dissent. To talk more about this, I'm joined live by left-wing political analyst Caleb Maupin. Thanks for joining us again here on RT International. So what's your take on the banning of the Communist Party in Ukraine?
Well, in most societies around the world, communists are allowed to function as part of the debate and the discussion that goes on. And let's be clear, there are allegations being thrown out that the communists are engaging in violence, but anyone who's at all familiar with Marxism-Leninism, which is the ideology that the Ukrainian Communist Party bases itself on, understands that communists don't advocate isolated acts of violence or adventurism. Communists merely supported the right of the people to defend themselves, and the people in East Ukraine are defending themselves against a campaign of fascist violence and terror. This is a complete suppression of the rights of the people of Ukraine. The people of Ukraine should have the right to vote for the Communist Party. And let's be clear that the Communist Party in the Ukraine is not a small organization. It's not a small, isolated group. It represents millions and millions of people in Ukraine who can remember at one point in Ukraine there was no unemployment. Everyone had a job, everyone had health care, and millions of people in Ukraine can remember that, and they can remember what life was like before capitalism was reintroduced.
Do you think these voters are worried about them being disenfranchised by this?
Well, this is a suppression of democratic rights. And in addition to, this talk of a ban, already members of the Ukrainian parliament from the Communist Party have been beaten up on the floor of parliament. Fights are breaking out all the time. People are being suppressed. And there's even a bill that's been drafted that wouldn't just ban the Ukrainian Communist Party. It would ban the ideology of communism in Ukraine. How do you ban an ideology? How does one ban an ideology? Would the Bible be illegal because many of the statements made by Jesus Christ could be interpreted as communistic, things about feeding the poor? I mean, that's very outrageous. This is an effort to suppress the democratic rights of the people of Ukraine who are fighting for independence, and it doesn't come just from Kiev. It comes from Wall Street, and it comes from London, as the bankers try to control the world and beat down any force that would emerge as a source of opposition to them.
What do you think this decision says about the current authorities in Ukraine?
It's very clear that the current leadership of the Ukraine is from the ultra-right wing. Hitler has been praised. Ultra-right-wing fascists like Bandera and others are being praised. Efforts are being made to destroy monuments to those who heroically fought in the Second World War and defeated fascism. The character of this government is becoming overwhelmingly clear. And while the U.S. media may try to deny it, the current Ukrainian government is an ultra-right-wing fascist government, and it's being supported by the United States and by the tax dollars of people here in the United States, and that is an outrage.
Socialist activist Caleb Maupin, thank you again for your time on RT International. After the break, with at least 800 killed in ongoing Gaza violence, we talk to grieving relatives forced to bury loved ones in overcrowded cemeteries. Stay with us.
I'm Abby Martin. The stories we cover here, you're not going to hear anywhere else.
Another big story that made